Okay, welcome everybody. Today is Friday, and we're going to be wrapping up chapter 2 today for marketing for entrepreneurs. Um, Chapter is finding and evaluating the right marketing opportunity. I remember turning the TV on, but I didn't plug into the actual system. So one day I'm going to remember to do all this. So we'll see when that day is. Okay. All right. So last class on Wednesday, we left off with the other types of opportunities with the veiled and niche opportunities. Today we're going to be picking up on slide 20, and it deals with evaluating market opportunities. Before we get started with the new materials, any questions on anything that we've covered so far? Everyone's good? All right, so we'll get into evaluating market opportunities. So there's some important characteristics that we need to consider when evaluating different market opportunities. Some of these things that we need to consider are the market size. So how big is the actual market? How much activity is going on in it? The market growth rate, is it a flat market or is it a vertical one? I mean, is it growing? Is it dying down? So that's an important factor. Can it create significant value for the customer? Because we obviously know that's what the main goal is to create value for the customer. And is it a well-defined target market? Are you sure that you know that that's the target market that you need to be going after? So, an example of the market size and the growth rate. The book gives an example of how like pop I think this is misworded here, but it says pop, I believe, if I'm saying it right, is a flat market. It's just saturated. It's decent profit at first, but there's not a lot of growth potential. But then it says that the bottled water industry is totally different. That people at the time of the text, it was really growing. People were coming out with like the vitamin waters and all the different types of waters, smart waters, and charging an arm and a leg for a bottle of water. So they were saying how that market actually has some growth potential. So there's just an example of that. But I think everyone gets the gist of what market size is and what market growth is and what the capabilities are there. The value, lower price, better quality. We know that's the example of creating value for a customer. Can we do it better than the competitor? Is there some type of a competitive advantage that we can obtain during our process of creating our business and running our business? And target markets must be able to be defined and described by the entrepreneur. Why do we think that's important that the entrepreneur should be able to define and describe his market or her market?
You got to know yourself.
Right. I mean, you can't go into something blind and just say, well, hey, I'm just going to do this and not have done your homework whatsoever. You need to know what type of market it is, what type of services and goods are provided in it, what the demographics and all the other factors that we've spoke about from chapter 1. So we really need to know what type of market it is before we try to penetrate it. Some criteria for evaluation. This is going to make up a decent amount of our slides here, just determining what criteria we need to evaluate. So a customer felt need. If the customers already have a need for your product, obviously it's going to be much easier to grow your venture because there's already a demand for whatever you're trying to bring to market. So half of the problem's already been taken care of. There's a demand for it, so you just have to try to figure out how you're going to take care of that demand. Customer satisfaction with current product. To determine the felt need and satisfaction, it's imperative that you engage the customer and solicit feedback. So obviously we want to get out there and do our social scanning and get out there and really just talk to these customers and find out if they're really happy with what the status quo is or if they want something a little different in the market that could ultimately open an opportunity for us to fill that void that's in that marketplace. So customer felt need, customer satisfaction with product, important criteria for evaluation. Access to customers. Access to customers, we can see here it's in two forms, the physical access and communication access. What do you think the physical access is?
Maybe like a brick and mortar store where they can come in and actually talk to your customer face to face.
Yeah, it could come into what form of like physical access. So are you going to have physical access with the customers, like you said, in a brick and mortar store? Are they actually going to come into your, into your marketplace and actually interact with you there with your goods and services, and, with whatever you're offering? It also can be like your distribution channel. How are you going to actually physically connect with them? If you're a whole full blown internet company, like just online, and you don't have a physical presence like in a brick and mortar store. Or you could have a hybrid approach. You could have either or. But so that's pretty much the physical access. How are you gonna physically get your goods or services to your customer? It could be obviously in the storefront, or however using FedEx or UPS or U.S. Postal Service, or start your own carrier, or however you want to go about it. So that's the physical access with when dealing with access to customers. What about the communication access? What all do you think that covers? I know it kind of tells itself what it is, but what do you think that deals with?
The first thing I think of is just social media, being able to convey to your customer what you're about and what you're going to sell.
Right, that's exactly it. So for the communication access, how are you going to communicate with them? What channel are you going to use to communicate? Telephone, newspapers, the new forms like Facebook, the social media, and all that stuff. How are you going to describe your product or your service to the people, and so they know that it's out there? So that's the communication access to customers. Ability to command premium prices. So the book says you need to avoid competing on the basis of price. And a lot of times for early entrepreneurs and startups, it's really important to try to not compete on price, because as we discussed in our class last semester, price is a very important part for an entrepreneur, because ultimately the price you set for your goods or services is going to determine what your gross profit is, and from that point, your gross profit, you want to cover all other expenses to bring them goods to the marketplace. So that's the goal of where you want to set your price. So obviously early on, you don't really want to get into the tic-tac battle of who's the lowest price, because some companies have the power and the capital to be able to play that game and just base it on volume. But usually when you're starting out, you don't have those resources available. So it's actually better to go ahead and demand a premium price. That way you can have that high gross profit to cover yourself and get revenue coming into your business, so you can grow it. And so really what we want to focus on, if we want ability to command a premium price, then what are we really going to try to focus on?
Probably just quality of the product.
Right. We want to try to beat our customers in some way, some shape or fashion. We want to either have a better product, get it to them faster, just have some type of a premium service available, for whatever our good or service is, to be able to demand that higher price to kind of separate us from our competition. So it'll kind of make us stick out. So that's why you really just want to avoid competing on the basis of price. Down the road, once you're a powerhouse company, if you want to go about doing that, it's really up to you. It's up to the entrepreneur, obviously. If that's the business model you want to go with, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's better off, especially in the early days, to avoid playing that price battle. So just try to just differentiate yourself from the competition and have a superior product. Sustainable competitive advantage. So a unique strength relative to your competitors. We all know what the competitive advantage is. It can come in various forms: higher quality products, higher quality customer service, speed and performance, lower cost, customer intimacy, or branding. So all these ways are ways we can try to create a competitive advantage and to keep one. But the goal is obviously to have a sustainable competitive advantage, because we don't just want to outperform our competitors now. We want to do it now and moving forward into the future, and try to stay a step ahead of them. Ability to build and sustain a brand. So obviously, I think everyone knows what a brand is. Everyone's familiar with like Nike, Reebok, Adidas, whatever it might be. So it says branding is an activity that uses a name, phrase, or design to identify products, services of one marketer while differentiating from competition. And obviously, we're dealing with branding. There has to be a brand name. The brand name could be the name, a phrase, or a design. I think we've seen that, obviously with the Nike, it's got the swoosh, it's got the name Nike. It's got the phrase "just do it." So I mean, I know we're all familiar with all this stuff. Branding, I think honestly, branding could be one of your most important things, because that really is gonna just put a stamp on your product or your service. And if it's a good product or service, it's going to really grow. And people become really familiar with brands. And a lot of times people become, biased towards brands. They just buy only a certain brand because they've just had, good results with buying from a certain company or a certain brand. So branding is obviously very important. And I'm sure you can probably relate to that. Just when you buy stuff, if you buy certain shoes, you probably stick to certain brands because you're familiar with them. You know what they're going to feel like. You know what the size runs and all that stuff. So branding is very important. Presence of valuable intellectual property. So what is intellectual property?
And I know what it is, I just can't word it.
It's like design, something you come up with, like creative out of your own, like thinking out of your own mind, pretty much. So it says here, creations of the mind, inventions, literary, artistic works, stuff of that nature. Symbols, names, images, designs used in commerce. And it has two types of intellectual property: industrial property and copyrights. Industrial property is going to be more like your trademarks and stuff of that sort. And then copyrights is going to actually protect the intellectual property. And I think everyone's heard of trademark laws and copyright laws and all that stuff, obviously. So, obviously, if you're the intellectual property is going to be a huge criteria for evaluation because a lot of times, intangibles and these designs is what ultimately makes people become really, really successful. So obviously, we want to know about these types of intellectual property and want to know the laws out there to protect them against competitors from trying to steal from you and copy off your design and your ideas. So it's important to know what intellectual property is, and if you have it, how to protect it. And obviously, if you do have a valuable piece of intellectual property, that would give you a good cue that you're probably on the right path to being successful if you think it's something that the market's going to respond to in a positive way. So good on intellectual property. So intellectual property terminology, just a little more. Patent, an exclusive right granted for an invention. It can be a product, a process, or a new solution to a problem. And it's generally good for 20 years. So the patent pretty much just gives you a little bit of time to operate with it before other people can start using your design as well. So about 20 years is generally how long a patent is good for. And just remember, it's a right that's granted for not just a product or a process, or just it could be a solution to a problem as well. So like if it's a patent, like a new way of like mining coal out, like there's been new machines that's been patented, for mining coal out, like different ways, doing less like human labor and more like machine intensive stuff like that. So processes, just as important to point out that processes and solutions to problems can also be trademarked, not just an actual product. Trademark is a distinctive sign which identifies certain goods or services as those produced or provided by a specific person or business. So I think we've all seen trademarks. Trademarks, they've dated back to ancient times when people used to build these pieces of architect, just these huge buildings or whatever it might be. They put their little stamp or their little name or symbol in a part of the building or something. So trademarks have been around for a long time. It's a distinctive sign to just help identify whatever your brand is. So some more criteria for evaluation. Competitors, the number and strength of them out there. So obviously we need to know who our competitors are, kind of be in the loop of what's going on with them, what they're doing. We don't want to be obsessive with it because obviously that can take time away from worrying about what the customer's needs and worries are. But we still need to be aware of our competitors and know they're out there and know what they're up to. Barriers to entry, we need to consider all barriers, whether small or large. What could be some barriers to entry into a certain market?
Well, if you want to open up a bank, there's probably a lot of regulations and stuff you have to run through the government and startup fees and things like that. So it's probably key barrier to entry would just be capital that you have to get first to get everything going.
So it's kind of industry specific based upon whatever industry it is you're going into. And like you said, it's the capital, regulations, just all those marketing forces and external forces coming at you. You have to deal with all that. All that could factor into being barriers. There's not right or wrong answer really to the barriers to entry. Like if you were going to start like a restaurant, A barrier to entry is going to be obviously you need to find a place you're either going to lease or you're going to purchase. So that's a barrier to entry. Then you got to find a supplier, a food distributor, so who's going to distribute your food. And if you want to serve alcohol, then another barrier is you got to go through the ABC license and deal with all that. You have to get your name through the Secretary of State for your LLC or whatever form of organization you have. You have to get your insurances. So all these are barriers to entry, and obviously all of them take money in order to do so. So obviously cash is king. If you have the money, you can pull off about anything you want to. So you have to be strategic how you go about it. But obviously anything, like I said, any of those items could be examples of barriers to entry of just being able to get yourself up and going and be able to compete within that market. Cost to enter the market. So that's another thing we just talked on. How much is it going to cost you to actually get everything up and going? Cost to scale up. So once you get up and going, how much is it going to cost you to actually scale up your processes and your business model, and maybe expand and start another branch or something like that. So to actually, if you see that you have to scale it up, that you can't keep up with the demand, like how are you gonna do that? What is it going to cost you to be able to do that? You have to go. Most likely, you're probably going to have to get an investor or go to a bank for a loan or something. Time the first dollar. So how long is it going to take before you actually, go out there, you create your company, you go out there, market your brand and talk with individuals? How long is it going to be till you actually turn your first dollar or make your first sale? That's very important, obviously, because a lot of people might be really just struggling, like, man, we're not going to make it through this week or maybe this month if we don't make these couple sales to get some money back in, to kind of replenish our pockets a little bit, because you're probably going to have it all tied up in the inventory and all that other stuff. So time the first dollar is huge, because you got to think, when you're running a business, you have all these expenses, payroll, your insurance, taxes, and everything that you have to have running, paying, and make sure you stay on top of to make sure that your business stays going. But at the same time, you also, if depending on whatever it is you're selling, if it's a tangible good, then you have to have a certain level of inventory, so you have to make sure that's replenished. So there's just a lot of money being spread out really thin. So that time to the first sale is really important to kind of start determining when you can start seeing some of that money come back around and start turning a profit. Everyone, you good on all these here?
Yeah, it reminds me of that video we watched last semester about the guy who found it LinkedIn. I can't remember his name.
Scott Cook.
He said,
Or not LinkedIn. That was the.
I can't remember.
I don't remember his name either. Scott Cook was Intuit. Yeah, sorry, but go ahead.
He said, when you're trying to do a startup, it's like jumping off a cliff and trying to assemble an airplane on the way down.
Right, I forgot he said that, and that's a pretty good example of what it would be. And chances are, most people can't assemble an airplane on the time it takes to fall.
You gotta make sure you get it done before you run out of money.
Right, so you just really have to be on the move quick, and really no time or room for errors or mistakes. And I just love these lights. Yeah, I forgot all about him using that. Yeah, I know I'd probably hit the ground. All right, so some more criteria. Here we have two little examples, a red ocean and a blue ocean. A red ocean is going to be an existing market with established competition, and the objective is to just steal market share and just outdo your competitors. And it's kind of a cutthroat industry, really. It's a crowded market. It's difficult to turn a profit and grow. So obviously, with it being cutthroat competition, that's where the sea is going to turn red. The blood's going to leak out pretty much. It's a cutthroat environment. It's really established. There's a lot of supply and demand already that's in there, but it's really tight. Just a tight market to enter into. So that's what the red ocean is pretty much. It's going to be something that's already an existing market with established competition, and they're just out there to outperform the other person and try to eliminate the competition. So that's the cutthroat one, the red ocean one. On the other hand, the blue ocean is going to be new market space, and demand is created, not fought over. So this is obviously going to be created by new value and innovation. So this is going to be like the market creation as opposed to the market fulfillment. Obviously, it's going to be a blue ocean because your customers don't even realize that they have that desire or that want or that need yet. But as word gets out there, word of mouth grows and the marketing grows, then obviously they're going to start just coming on in there and coming on in there, but there's not going to be a cutthroat environment because there's not a lot of competitors in there because not a lot of people are innovative. That's just easier to kind of go to something that's already there, and then easier to start it because there's an established thing. But then once you get there, it's harder to maintain and grow it. But obviously, when you create a new value or an innovation, it's harder to think of it. But once you actually come up with it, then it's going to be easier from that point if it's something that's going to be a success, to bring to market because you're not going to be fighting trying to steal customers and market share because in essence you're creating the market, so they're just going to come to you and fall in your lap once the word gets out. At least that's the plan. But that's the difference. That's the difference between using the example here of a red ocean and a blue ocean. Does that makes sense how that works? So pretty much the red ocean, existing markets, cutthroat. It's just a lot of competition. Blue ocean, you're being an innovator and pretty much creating a new opportunity, new market. So it's just obviously it's a pretty ocean, just with wait for people to come in and test your products. Really. Another important thing, a criteria to evaluate is going to be the voice of the consumer. It's known as VOC, is how they abbreviate it in the book. It also says this could be some of the most important criteria. It could be quantitative or qualitative, interacting with customers in the field and in depth. And obviously, we should judge this talking with customers based upon its credibility. So, how credible is the person that we were talking to? Are they a reliable person? Like, are they just going to tell me what I want to hear and then turn around and tell someone else? Like, man, I can't believe like this person just came to me with this idea. I just, hopefully he doesn't listen to me because I totally just told him what he wanted to hear. So they're going to be reliable. Validity pretty much goes in with all the other stuff. And predictability. So predictability, with hearing what they said, can you kind of predict that to kind of come to fruition? Pretty much, is it going to come true? So these are just some things that we should really judge the individuals on. That when we're going out there, is like how credible they are, reliable, stuff of that sort. Let's see here. Let's go back here one more time. And the book talks about a good way to get the voice of the consumer is to do your concept statement and do the surveys, and that's a good way to actually just to find it. And I know we did that a little bit with our feasibility plan last semester with the experiential class with those concept statements. So that you got a good idea of actually what that's about there. So that's a good way of actually just determining what the voice of the consumer might be. A personal fit. So obviously, if it's not a good personal fit for you, if you don't have good knowledge of the industry, if you don't really have a good team built around you, if it's just if it's not something you enjoy, then chances are you're not going to be very successful at it. So obviously, you really need to make sure it's something that you have a passion about and that you really want to do, because being an entrepreneur and really trying to start a business isn't an easy task. So you want to make sure it's a good personal fit for you so that you ultimately enjoy what you're trying to do, because if you enjoy it, you're going to have a better passion and try to make sure it succeeds better. You'll be less likely to give up than if you're interested in it, to begin with. So, can the opportunity obtain financing? So obviously, both these criteria affect your ability to build an enduring venture. If we can't obtain financing, a lot of times then we can't even open our doors. Obviously, and so it's important to be able to. Obviously, we talked a little bit the last couple classes about showing that we're going to be profitable and have a profitable venture. So, these investors and banks want to see that. So, because a lot of times one of the hardest parts is being able to obtain financing. I mean, that's one of the main reasons you even make a business plan or a feasibility plan, because the whole goal is to try to prove to someone, hey, I've got a really good idea. This is our business model. This is how we're going to make money. So you really want to be able to obtain financing. If you can't, you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot from the start. Okay, so that's it for the criteria to determine. I'm sure that's probably not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there's probably other stuff that could be determined, but that's going to be the main ones that we focus on. So determining the extent of the opportunity. So knowing the market potential of your venture is obviously critical. We want to know if it's going to be realistic, if we're going to be able to actually make money. So the book says that typically the marketer finds out the aggregate size of the market and then makes a revenue projection based on a certain percentage of the market share. They kind of have these little tiers set here as just a means of kind of just evaluating yourself of how optimistic you're being or pessimistic. The three percentages that the book uses is being able to capture 10% of the market share is being pessimistic, 15% of the market share is realistic, and 20% is going to be optimistic. So pretty much that's the way you go about it on determining the market share. I think that the book has an example on how they determine the market share. They have a pretty easy example here. It's on the bottom of page 35. It says assume that the market size for product category X is going to be $1 million. So the whole entire market size is $1 million for product X. Some entrepreneur will forecast capturing a particular percentage of market share. And in this example, it's going to say 20%. The market estimate for the enterprise would be $200,000. So that's just a quick, easy way to see what they're talking about here with the market share. So the overall market share out there is $1 million. If he's going to capture 20% of it, then obviously his projection on what he thinks his revenue is going to be $200,000. Makes sense?
Is that talking about total sales like per year?
Yeah, this is vague. This is a vague example. They're just kind of giving you an example of how you can kind of go about it because there's a lot of variables that are not, entered into this. And you'll see there's another example we'll touch on. They're going to base it upon if everyone out there is actually buying from him and no one else. So people that said they would be interested in that type of a service, they're not factoring in the competition. But they're just using this as an example. But like I said, it's a pretty vague example. That's just an example of how they kind of just the overall picture of it. Okay, where there's $1 million out there in market share. If we're going to gain 20% of it, then our revenue we expect the turn is $200,000. So that's just how they go about it. I think it's kind of vague myself, but that's what the book says. A little more determining the extent of the opportunity. Get the voice of the consumer through a Likert scale survey, a scale of 1 to 5. The 2-box score. So pretty much what it's going to say is 1 is very unlikely, 2 is unlikely. You can't really determine if you will, or you'd say A or nay on 3. Likely on 4, very likely on 5. So they're pretty much what they're saying is that's going to be your scale you set out with your concept statement. And the only 2 boxes that you're going to even use of any relevance is the likely and very likely. That's the only 2 ones. So that's going to give you the voice of the consumer 2-box score. And then what the example is on page 36 of what they're going to be talking about. So an example of how it works. He says he was planning on opening a gourmet food store. He knew the average expenditure on gourmet food by families in my trade area at that time was about $1,000 per family per year. And I'm right here in the middle of the page is where I'm at on 36. I presented my venture concept to 100 potential customers and asked how likely it would be that they would shop at my gourmet food store. 20% said that they were likely or very likely to do so. I also knew the trade area for my store had about 10,000 families. So my market estimate for my gourmet food store was as follows. So obviously we know there was 10,000 families, right? So you take the 10,000 families in the trade area, and we're going to multiply that by the 20%, which is the voice of the consumer 2-box store, right? 2-box score, because he got about 20% of the people that said that they would be either likely or very likely. So he's taking 20% as his number there from his little concept statement there. And then he's going to multiply that figure by 1,000, which is the annual expenditure. And that'll give him $2 million is what he expects to turn for his gross profit or his sales during the first year.
What does it mean by annual expenditure?
The annual expenditure, that is their $1,000 per family of the people in the families that were actually interested in that market. The average family had an annual expenditure. They spent roughly $1,000 per family on that type of good or service. So that's what the annual expenditure is. That's why he's using that as one of his components within that formula there. So does that make sense? Pretty much how he got a 2-box score. He's only using the likely, very likely results, which was about 20% of what the people he surveyed. So that's how he got the 20% for the voice of the consumer. There was 10,000 families and within the area that was relevant. And then $1,000 was what the annual person that actually spent on that was. So it just using that right there. But like I said, this is kind of vague as well and biased because he's assuming that all 20% of the people that said that they would be likely or very likely to do so, they are going to always shop from his store, which that's not going to be the case. But
That's not
yeah,
probably already spent money.
right. I mean, so it's kind of vague, but it's kind of a good idea, a thought process, like a way to kind of get a rough idea and actually be able to say, hey, well, this is how I came up with my projections. Do your homework on it. And actually, this guy said he actually went on, and I don't know if you've read the chapter. He went on and actually he created the store, and he said the first year he did more than 1.8 million in this first year. It exceeded 2 million in year two. So he was pretty much right on with what he thought it was going to be. So I mean, even though he was assuming that everyone would buy from him, but so maybe that's why the number was just a little less than what he thought. Not everyone actually did, but so in this case, according to the author, it was a pretty accurate estimate of what he thought his revenue would be. So that's the example from the book on page 36. Just a little idea of how to go about, seeing what the demand would be and how, based upon that demand and the voice of the consumer, how you can expect to set whatever you think you're going to produce that year, whatever your sales will be. Everyone good on that with determining the extent of the opportunity? So opportunities in the business model. So obviously at this point we've already evaluated and determined what our best opportunity is going to be. So the next step is to develop a business model. All a business model is just a framework for making money. There's really no set right or wrong business model. There is some components that enter into a business model that are pretty much a framework, a universal framework, that stuff that should be included into it. But it's important to know that it can be tailored to certain businesses in certain industries. So, but overall, a business model is just a framework for making money. It's a set of activities the business is going to perform, both how and when they will be performed, and it's ultimately to create value to the customer and earn a profit. So that's what the business model's objective is to actually be able to do this and be able to perform, how to perform their processes and turn a profit. So the stuff that should be addressed within the business model is how the business is going to make money. Obviously, that's very important. How the business is going to create value, because obviously that value is what's going to ultimately grow that business. If customers perceive us or they validate us as being, of value, then obviously they're gonna buy into what we're selling. For whom the business will create value. So obviously, once again, really defining and knowing your market, so and know who you're going to try to create value for. What's the business's internal source of sustainable competitive advantage? So obviously, we want to know what we're good at and stick to it and try to keep ourselves ahead of the game there. How will the business position itself in the marketplace? So, how are we going to fit into that existing marketplace? Are we gonna fit in? Are we gonna battle on price? Are we gonna set ourselves with a premium product and not play the price game? So, what's going to be the size of our business compared to other businesses that are in there? So, just how's that business position itself going to be sitting in the marketplace? Some great entrepreneurs might also ask themselves some other questions like, where's the money? I got a kick out of these when I was reading through them. Obviously, I know this is what the overall objective is, but I just thought it was funny because when it talks about great entrepreneurs are going to think these questions, and it's all obviously just straight about money right here, and we always are talking about service value, value to the customers, but here is saying great entrepreneurs are thinking these questions, which you have to, because obviously money is the driving force behind having a business. So saying, where's the money? And that's important. So where's the money out there? Because obviously you have a great product and service, but if it's too expensive, then, and you don't know where the money is at, then what good is it to bring to the market? So what market has the money? Within that market, who actually has the money? So who do we need to actually, tailor these results or these products and services to try to get that money from the people? The next thing is, how do I get that money? How do I get the money from the people? What do I need to provide to get the money? How do I get the money faster than anyone else? Obviously, you want to stay a step ahead, get that competitive advantage. If you have the competitive advantage, the money's going to come faster to you than it is to other people because they're going to flock to you as opposed to them. how do I get it time and time again from the same customer? So obviously we want to build a relationship with the customer. You know, it's a two-step process. We want to bring them in, but we also want to maintain it. You know, and because that way we can get word of mouth, the free advertisement from them, keep them happy, and then also keep them coming back as well. You know, and how can I add another revenue stream later? So what's an example of a revenue stream?
Just another income source.
Right. So pretty much like if the book says if you're selling cars, you know, maybe not everyone wants to buy cars, some wants to lease cars. So maybe you'll start a leasing agency, you know, and make a little subsidiary or a branch that deals with leases. So then now you've tapped into another market and you're not losing or foregoing the profit of actually leasing vehicles. Because you know maybe there's people like I said that want to buy them, some want to lease them. You know, so that's an example there. You know, just stuff like that. You know, just being able to just opening new streams off other people. And a lot of times it's important for the entrepreneur to know that an individual customer can actually you can actually build it, you know, multiple revenue streams based off of those desires and those wants. So that's another reason why it's so important to listen to what the customer has to say and truly hear what the customer's saying as far as what they want and what they need, because it can give you better ideas. You know, make your current product or service better, or like we discussed, maybe open up a whole another line of business to create a whole other revenue stream. I mean, why send that person that wants to lease a car out to another company to make the money when you've already got the vehicles, just change a little bit of a structure tweak your business model and change a little bit of the legalities of it and start leasing cars, you know? So add another revenue stream later is important. And that'll obviously help you be sustainable with your business, because then all your eggs aren't in one basket. If one revenue stream's down, the other one can be up. They kind of feed off one another. Same thing if you have different businesses in different industries. One industry might be up, one might be down, but you can kind of keep this business going. When one's good, the other's bad. Feed it, keep this one alive, because there's times this one might be good, this one might be bad. So that's a good idea to be able to, if you continue to grow as an entrepreneur and you're successful, to start new ventures, because it can ultimately give you a crutch for your other businesses. Value proposition should be a central aspect of your business model. So obviously we know the value proposition is going to recognize the customer's problem. We have to know that there's a problem out there. We're going to create the product or service to solve that problem, and then communicate its value to the customers. So pretty much that's the value proposition, the steps that we want to go about. Notice the problem, create something to fix it, and make sure that we market it and get it out there and let the people know that it's available for them to come and purchase it. So that wraps up the actual content for chapter 2. The next assignment we have in the class is the entrepreneurial exercise. So it says come up with 3 possible marketing opportunities. Now using figure 2.1, go through the process of evaluating those opportunities and then determine what the results are and find out which opportunity, if any, appears to have some potential. If none survived the process, what were the main showstoppers? This one here, I am going to go ahead and change the due date. I know I had it set for Sunday at 11:59. I'm going to go ahead and kick this one out later in the next week. I'll go ahead and make it next Sunday as well, just to kind of stay on the same track here. I'm going to look at the way that the class is laid out and see if I can keep it on that schedule, because the way it looks, that way it'll give you kind of a week from when we finish the content to get that assignment in. I'd like to catch it up to where people are kind of working on it as we go, but I don't know if that's the best way. The reason I kind of want to catch it up and not have it overlapping is I don't want it overlapping. You working on something while we're trying to learn new content, but at the same time, I don't want to rush it and have you working on it too soon before we cover through all the content too. So for this, at least for this one here, and I'll get back with y'all next week on the next one as well. For this one, I will go in and change it from being due at 11:59 this Sunday to the next one. But remember, the entrepreneur exercise for the first chapter is going to still be due this Sunday, but this one I'll make due the following Sunday. Like I said, that's all I have for everyone today. So that's the end of chapter 2, and please just make sure you get these things in, because I do believe that just the entrepreneur exercises alone makes up 1/4 of your overall grade. So it is a pretty substantial part of the course. And I think another 25 comes from the final, another 25 from the midterm, and the other 25 is from the marketing plan that we create. So just wanted to point out that these are really important exercises. So with that being said, that's all I have for today. Any questions on anything? Nothing. Everything's good. All right. Well, that's it. I hope everyone has a good day and a good weekend. And on Monday, we will be starting on Chapter 3, using marketing research to ensure entrepreneurial success.